When I first applied for the ranger position at Black Hollow Forest, I didn't think much of it. A remote post, sure, but I craved isolation. After my brother's accident, silence had become my refuge. The job description was vague, but promised good pay and peaceful solitude. Exactly what I needed. The station was deep in the forest, a 6-hour drive from the nearest town. As I approached, the trees grew denser, their ancient trunks blotting out the late afternoon sun. My truck rumbled down the narrow dirt road until the ranger station finally emerged, a weathered wooden cabin surrounded by endless green. I was greeted by Ranger Holt, a man in his late 60s with sharp eyes and a voice like gravel. He shook my hand firmly. "Glad you made it, Mason," he said. "This place isn't for everyone." I smiled, though unease prickled at the back of my mind. "I can handle quiet." "You'll find quiet here," he replied, "and things you can't explain." That was my first warning. Inside, Holt showed me around the small station, just a radio room, supply closet, kitchen, and 2 bedrooms. A fireplace crackled softly in the corner. I noticed 4 wooden plaques mounted on the wall, each engraved with a single rule. 1. Never open the basement door. 2. Do not respond to voices after midnight. 3. Leave an offering at the forest shrine every dawn. 4. Patrol trail, 7 only at noon. Never before. Never after. I read them aloud, frowning. Some kind of tradition? Holt's expression darkened. Not tradition. Survival. Break any of these, and you might not make it back. I chuckled nervously, waiting for him to admit he was joking. He didn't. That night I lay in the creaky bed, staring at the ceiling. Wind howled through the trees. Holt had left to gather supplies, leaving me alone. My flashlight rested on the nightstand beside me, its beam flickering in the drafty room. At exactly midnight, I heard it. A voice, a woman's voice, soft and pleading. "Please, help me." It came from just beyond the window. I froze. The rules pulsed in my mind like a heartbeat. Do not respond to voices after midnight. My instincts screamed to grab the flashlight and investigate. But the memory of Holt's grave face stopped me cold. "Please," the voice repeated, almost sobbing now. "I'm lost." I shut my eyes and pulled the blanket over my head, heart hammering. Minutes crawled by. The voice faded. Silence returned. But I knew this was just the beginning. Morning came with a heavy fog that blanketed the forest. I barely slept after the voice incident, but I pushed myself out of bed and grabbed my ranger jacket. Remembering Rule 3, I stuffed a granola bar into my pocket as an offering and headed out. The forest felt different. The usual chirping birds and rustling leaves were absent, replaced by an oppressive quiet. Dew clung to the underbrush as I followed the narrow path Holt had pointed out the day before. After about 10 minutes, I reached the shrine. It was older than I expected, twisted wooden beams forming a crude arch over a moss-covered stone slab. Strange symbols were carved deep into the rock, their meaning lost to time. Beneath the arch lay small trinkets, coins, feathers, polished stones, even what looked like a child's toy car. Leave an offering every dawn. I placed the granola bar gently on the slab. As soon as my hand withdrew, the wind picked up, rustling the treetops, despite the stillness moments before. A low hum vibrated beneath my feet, almost like the earth itself acknowledged the gift. I stepped back, unsettled but obedient. When I returned to the station, Holt was waiting, arms crossed. "You heard it last night, didn't you?" he asked without preamble. "The voice?" I nodded. "A woman. She sounded desperate." Holt's eyes hardened. "It wasn't a woman. But that's how it works. It sounds like someone you want to help. That's how it draws you out." I shivered. "What happens if someone answers?" Holt hesitated. The last ranger did. And? He pointed out the window toward the tree line. They found his radio and boots at the edge of Trail 7. Nothing else. My stomach nodded. The rules weren't superstitions. They were warnings based on grim history. I spent the rest of the day learning the station's equipment. There was a shortwave radio, a logbook stretching back decades, and an old trail map pinned to the wall. Trail 7 was marked in bold red ink. A note beneath it read, "No patrol before or after noon." By noon the next day, I'd be making my first patrol there. That night, I double-checked the locks and kept my flashlight within reach. Midnight came and went without voices, but sleep still eluded me. At 3:07 a.m., a loud thud echoed from the basement door. My blood turned to ice. Rule 1, never open the basement door. I crept to the door, my breath shallow. Something scraped against the other side. Slow, deliberate, thud. Scrape, thud. I backed away, heart pounding in my ears. Whatever was down there wasn't trying to be quiet. It wanted me to know it was there. By dawn, the noises from the basement had stopped, but the sense of dread lingered. I completed the morning ritual at the shrine, this time leaving a silver coin I found in a drawer. Again, the forest seemed to respond, the breeze stirring at the exact moment the offering touched the stone. Was it just my imagination? Probably. Hopefully. When noon approached, I grabbed my patrol gear, radio, flashlight, and a map. Holt had left again, heading to the nearest town for supplies, so Trail 7 was my responsibility. The entrance to Trail 7 was marked by 2 leaning pines that formed a crooked archway. Beyond them, the path was narrower than the others, winding deep into denser forest. I crossed under the pines at exactly 12 p.m., not a minute sooner, not a minute later. At first, it was an ordinary patrol. I marked fallen branches, checked for signs of poachers, and noted animal tracks. But about half a mile in, things changed. The forest grew unnaturally quiet. No birds, no insects. The air grew cold, my breath fogging slightly, even though it was late spring. And then I saw it. Half buried in the earth beside the trail was a boot. Weather-worn, the leather cracked. I knelt and brushed away the dirt. Inside the boot was a radio, old, corroded, but still recognizable. My stomach tightened. Holt's words echoed in my mind. The last ranger, was it his? As I examined the boot, a whisper carried on the breeze. "Help me." It was faint but distinct. Unlike the voice I heard on the first night, this one sounded closer. I stood quickly, flashlight sweeping the trees. Nothing. I checked my watch. 12:29 p.m. Nearly time to turn back. I marked the boot's location on the map and began the return trek, every instinct telling me to hurry. But the forest didn't want me to leave. Roots that weren't there before seemed to snake across the path. Shadows stretched in unnatural directions, forming shapes that made my skin crawl. More whispers tickled my ears, sometimes pleading, sometimes mocking. "Why don't you answer us?" I broke into a jog. The leaning pines came into view just as my watch hit 12:57 p.m. I didn't slow down until I burst back onto the main path, gasping for air. The forest behind me fell silent once more. That night, I logged the discovery of the boot and radio, but didn't mention the voices. Not yet. Holt would be back in the morning. I needed to talk to him first. I locked every door and window. At 3:07 a.m., the same time as before, the basement door rattled violently. But this time, something else followed. "Mason, it's your brother. Please let me out." My blood ran cold. My brother had died 6 months ago. "Mason, it's your brother. Please let me out." The voice was perfect. The exact tone, the exact words my brother used to say when he wanted my help as a kid. For a moment, my resolve cracked. I reached out, fingers brushing the cold doorknob. Then Rule 1 burned in my memory. Never open the basement door. Please, I'm so cold down here. I stumbled back, heart pounding so loud. I could barely hear the voice anymore. I grabbed the flashlight and backed into my room, locking the door behind me. The voice didn't stop. It kept pleading until dawn, when it finally faded into the morning fog. When Holt returned later that morning, he immediately noticed my pale face. "You heard it again," he said. I nodded. It sounded like my brother this time. He cursed under his breath and poured us both coffee. That's how it works. The things here, they remember. They learn who you are, who you've lost. They'll use every trick they can. I told him about the boot and the old radio I found on Trail 7. "That was Ranger Elkins," Holt said softly. "He broke Rule 2 one night, answered a voice he thought was his daughter. We never found him. Only the boot and his radio." His eyes darkened. "And don't think the basement's any safer. Whatever's down there, it's been trapped for years. By the rules, open that door and you set it free." I shivered. How did it get trapped down there in the first place? Holt didn't answer. He just stared into his coffee like it held all the terrible secrets of the forest. Later that afternoon, I asked him the question I'd been dreading. Why only patrol Trail 7 at noon? He looked at me sharply. "Because at noon, the forest sleeps. Whatever watches us from Trail 7, it's weakest then. Patrol any other time, and you won't come back." That night, I double-checked every lock and window again. I kept the radio close, but turned down low. Midnight came, and with it the familiar chill and whispers. But at 3:07 a.m., something changed. The basement door didn't just rattle. It cracked. A long splinter ran down the wood, as if something inside had scraped its claws, or worse, against it. "Soon," the voice whispered. "Soon you'll open it." The next morning, Holt examined the crack in the basement door without touching it. His face was pale. "It's getting stronger," he muttered. "We have to reinforce it," I said. He shook his head. "Won't matter. The door's not just wood, it's a seal. Once it starts breaking, it means the rules are weakening." A chill ran down my spine. "What do you mean, weakening? The rules can change?" "They can fail," Holt whispered. "If too many are broken, whatever's down there, and whatever's in the forest, will be free." I wanted to ask more, but he cut me off. "Your patrol, noon. Stick to the schedule." By 11:45, I was already heading toward Trail 7. I moved faster this time, flashlight and radio ready, hoping to avoid any more disturbing discoveries. But the forest had other plans. As I neared the halfway point, I spotted a figure standing in the middle of the trail. A man. He wore an old ranger uniform. His back was to me. He didn't move. My pulse quickened. Could it be Holt? No, the man was younger, thinner. "Sir," I called out. The figure didn't respond. I inched closer, the rules screaming in my mind. This wasn't right. Holt would never patrol Trail 7 alone, and certainly not before noon. As I got within a few feet, the man slowly turned his head. His face was a mess of shadows and decay. One eye was missing. The remaining one was glassy and hollow. It was the ranger from the boot, Elkins. But how? His body had never been found. His cracked lips moved, releasing a dry rasp. They never stopped watching. You must not break the seal. Then, without warning, his form crumbled into a heap of dry leaves and bones. I stumbled back, breath frozen in my throat. As the last of the bones scattered into the dirt, the forest grew deathly silent again. My watch read 12:29 p.m. I turned and ran back toward the station. When I burst into the cabin, Holt was waiting, pale as a ghost. "You saw Elkins, didn't you?" I nodded, still shaking. "That's not a good sign," Holt said. "The dead are starting to wake. It means the rules are weakening faster than I thought." I opened my mouth to speak, but a sharp crack echoed through the cabin. The basement door. Another splinter, longer than the last, split the wood down the middle. "Soon," the voice whispered again. "Soon you'll break the fourth rule, too." That night, Holt and I moved a heavy metal cabinet in front of the basement door. It felt like a futile gesture. The wood was already splintering, but we had to try. We sat in silence for a long time before Holt finally spoke. "You followed the first 3 rules without fail," he said. "But the fourth, Trail 7, that's where they'll try to break you next." I frowned. "But I followed the noon patrol time exactly." He nodded grimly. "So far, but they'll try to lure you off schedule, trick you, like they did with Elkins." His words lingered in my mind as I lay awake that night. Midnight passed quietly. No voices, no rattling. I almost thought we'd won some small victory, until the radio crackled to life at 2:13 a.m., a time we never used for communications. "Mason, urgent. There's a fire near Trail 7. Need immediate response." It was Holt's voice. I sat bolt upright, heart racing. "Get out there now. Lives may be at risk." I grabbed the flashlight and radio, adrenaline surging. But just as I reached for my boots, a thought struck me. Holt was asleep in the next room. I had heard his snoring just minutes ago. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the door handle. "Hurry, Mason," the radio urged. "The fire's spreading. Trail 7. My instincts screamed trap. Rule 4 burned in my mind. Patrol Trail 7 only at noon. Never before. Never after. If there really was a fire, I should see the glow through the windows. But when I peered outside, the forest was calm. No smoke. No flames. Just the cold, unbroken darkness. I returned to the radio and pressed the transmitter. "Holt, if this is really you, answer on channel 3. No response. Only static. Then, "We can't wait, Mason. People will die." The voice was almost perfect. Almost. But there was no urgency in the tone. Just cold, emotionless precision. I turned off the radio, heart hammering. Moments later, I heard footsteps outside. I peeked through the curtains. A figure was standing near the tree line. It looked like Holt, but taller and wrong. Its limbs were too long, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. It lifted one arm and pointed toward Trail 7. "Now," the voice whispered again from the radio. "Now." I backed away from the window. This was it. The rules were being tested. If I stepped outside before noon, I'd break the fourth rule. If I stayed, the thing might force its way in, or try something worse. The footsteps circled the cabin for the rest of the night. At 3:07 a.m., the basement door cracked again, a deep splintering sound that echoed through the entire station. Soon. The voice was no longer pleading. It was certain. By dawn, the footsteps and the voices had stopped. The forest outside looked ordinary again, sunlight filtering through the treetops. But I knew better. The forest was never ordinary, not here. When Holt emerged from his room, I told him everything. The radio transmission, the figure outside, the voice urging me to break Rule 4. He listened in silence, then gave a weary nod. "They're becoming desperate." I frowned. "Why now? Why the rush to break the rules all of a sudden?" "Because they sense the seal weakening." Holt glanced toward the basement door, now covered in deep cracks. "And once the seal is gone, they'll be free. No more rules. No more protection. At noon, I prepared for my patrol on Trail 7. I checked my watch carefully. It had become my lifeline, the only thing ensuring I didn't stray from the schedule. Holt had warned me never to trust the forest's light or the shadows, only the watch. I reached the entrance to Trail 7, took a deep breath, and stepped through the leaning pines at exactly 12 p.m. The air was colder than the previous days. The wind carried whispers just beyond the edge of hearing. As I followed the trail, the woods felt denser, the trees pressing closer. That's when I noticed it. My watch. The second hand had stopped moving. 12:04. PM frozen. Panic gripped me. Without the watch, I couldn't trust the time. The sun overhead seemed to hang motionless, impossible to read in the fractured light filtering through the leaves. "Mason!" a voice called out ahead. I spun around, flashlight raised. A young boy stood in the trail, barefoot, pale, eyes wide with fear. "Please help me. I'm lost." I swallowed hard. "I can't. I'm sorry." "Please." The fire. It's coming. Behind him, the forest shimmered, and smoke curled between the trees. Flames flickered just beyond sight. It wasn't real. It couldn't be real. Then the boy smiled. His lips cracked, and his skin rippled like water disturbed by a stone. "Break the rule, Mason. Just once. Save him." My fingers trembled near my radio. That's when Holt's voice crackled through, the real Holt. "Mason, it's not real. Get out, now." I turned and ran, the forest twisting around me. Roots snatched at my boots. Branches whipped my arms, but I kept running. The leaning pines came into view just as my pocket watch, an old backup I hadn't used in years, buzzed faintly against my leg. 12:29 p.m. I leapt through the archway and collapsed onto the main trail, gasping for breath. The boy, the fire, and the whispers all vanished. But when I returned to the station, the worst sign yet awaited me. On the basement door had split entirely down the middle. Only the metal cabinet held it shut now. The voice inside no longer whispered. It laughed. That evening, Holt sat across from me at the kitchen table. Neither of us touched the food. The cracked basement door loomed just beyond the doorway like a wound in the station's heart. "It's accelerating," Holt said, his voice hoarse. "The seal's nearly gone. They've never broken this many rules before." "I haven't broken any," I insisted. "Not one. They're testing limits, your limits." He rubbed his temples. "It's not just about you anymore. The forest is waking up. And when it fully wakes..." He didn't finish the thought. I leaned forward. "We have to reinforce the seal, rebind it. There must be something we can do." Holt shook his head slowly. "The original binding was done long ago, before my time, before the last 4 rangers. The rules are the binding. That's why we follow them. They hold the forces at bay. Without the rules..." He gestured toward the basement. "They're free." I wasn't ready to accept that. Not yet. That night, as the wind howled through the trees, I took matters into my own hands. I grabbed the old logbooks from the supply closet, dating back over 70 years, and poured through the yellowed pages by flashlight. Most of it was routine. Animal sightings, weather patterns, supply deliveries. But then I found it. A brittle, leather-bound journal wedged between the larger books. Its cover was stamped with a strange symbol, the same markings carved into the shrine stone. The journal belonged to Ranger Briggs, dated 1952. "The rules are not merely caution," one entry read. "They are the prison walls. I was told this by the last of the Hollow Men, the ones who first sealed the thing below. I must never waver. The next ranger must be warned." I flipped pages feverishly. If the door breaks, if voices call, If Trail 7 whispers, there is one chance, one final ritual. The shrine must receive a blood offering under the full moon. My breath caught. A blood offering. I glanced at the calendar. Tomorrow night was a full moon. If the sacrifice is accepted, the seal may hold. If not, the forest and all who dwell near it are lost. I slammed the journal shut. Suddenly the radio crackled to life, but this time it wasn't a voice mimicking Holt. It was Holt himself, his real voice, panicked. "Mason, I went to check the perimeter. There's something at the shrine. Meet me there. Now." My heart sank. The forest wasn't waiting for the full moon. It had moved up its timeline. I grabbed my flashlight, the old journal, and my hunting knife, just in case. As I stepped outside, the air was unnaturally still. No wind, no insects. The entire forest seemed to be holding its breath. The trail to the shrine felt longer than usual. Shadows curled between the trees, and the deeper I went, the colder it became. I kept my eyes fixed ahead, refusing to glance into the dark spaces between the trunks where movement teased the corners of my vision. When I reached the clearing, Holt was already there. He stood motionless near the shrine, flashlight dangling from his hand. His shoulders looked rigid, tense, too still. "Holt?" I called softly. He didn't answer. I moved closer, careful, the ground crunching softly beneath my boots. My flashlight's beam swept across the shrine. The offerings were gone. Every coin, trinket, and feather all missing. Only the bare, scarred stone remained, and the symbols carved into it pulsed faintly, as if lit from within by some inner fire. Suddenly Holt turned around. His face was blank, eyes glassy. "Holt?" I whispered again. "Not Holt?" a voice replied from his mouth. But it wasn't his voice. It was layered, multiple tones speaking at once. Male, female, child, elderly, all together. The seal breaks. The hollow men are gone. There will be no more bindings. My blood ran cold. I stepped back, gripping the knife. The fourth rule has bent, Mason. The others will follow. Behind the figure, wearing Holt's shape, the trees shifted unnaturally. Shapes formed in the darkness. Tall, thin figures with hollow eyes. Dozens of them. The hollow men. But they weren't protectors anymore. They were spectators. Suddenly, something cold wrapped around my ankle. I looked down. Roots. Dozens of black roots had erupted from the earth, winding up my legs, pulling me toward the shrine stone. "The final offering," the layered voice hissed. "Blood, yours, willingly or not." I slashed at the roots with the knife, severing them, stumbling back. Then, a bright beam cut through the darkness. The real Holt emerged from the tree line, shotgun in hand. "Step away from him," he roared. The thing wearing Holt's face smiled with a mouth too wide and too many teeth. "You are already too late." With that, it stepped back into the trees and vanished. The hollow men faded with it, melting into the forest shadows. But the shrine stone cracked down the center with a thunderous sound. The earth trembled beneath us. Holt grabbed my shoulder. "We don't have until tomorrow night anymore. The full moon comes early. Above us, the clouds parted. And the full moon, unnaturally large and crimson, had already risen. The forest pulsed with unnatural energy. Trees groaned under invisible weight. The air crackled like a coming storm, but no rain would fall tonight, only something far older and far more dangerous. The blood moon hung high, staining the forest red. Holt and I ran back to the station, the cracked shrine stone heavy in our thoughts. The rules, the only thing that had protected this place, were unraveling. "We have to do the ritual now," I gasped. The blood offering. It's the only chance. Holt nodded grimly. I'll prepare the circle. You get the journal, and Mason. His eyes were heavy with something between fear and resolve. If it comes to it, you might have to finish it alone. I didn't want to think about what he meant by that. Inside the cabin, I grabbed the journal and a first aid kit. As I flipped through the fragile pages, I found the ritual instructions. Under the blood moon, the offering must be made willingly. A cut to the palm, blood to fall upon the shrine stone. Speak the binding words. By life, by loss, by will, the seal endures. Simple. But nothing in this place was ever truly simple. We returned to the shrine just as the forest shifted again. The blood soaked into the cracked stone, which glowed faintly. For a heartbeat, I thought it was working. Then the stone shattered into a dozen pieces. Too late, the layered voice hissed from all around us. The ground split open behind the shrine. From the depths of blackness, a shape began to rise. Something massive, something ancient. The creature that had waited beneath the basement, beneath the earth, beneath the rules. Holt grabbed my arm. Run. Get back to the station. We still have one option left. What option? The final rule. The one never written. The keeper must choose. Before I could ask what that meant, the ground cracked again, and the first massive limb of the creature tore free of the soil. The hollow men vanished. The forest itself began to collapse. And the last night, a black hollow forest had begun. We ran. The earth roared beneath our feet as trees toppled and roots twisted like the limbs of waking giants. Behind us, the creature dragged itself from the depths, a shapeless mass of shadow, bone, and glistening eyes that burned like dying stars. The forest was no longer just a forest. It was alive and angry. When we reached the ranger station, the basement door had been blasted off its hinges. The metal cabinet lay in splinters. Black tendrils had spread from the opening, cracking the floorboards and walls. There was no more pretending the seal could be repaired. I turned to Holt, breathless. What did you mean, the final rule? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled a rusted key from around his neck and handed it to me. I hoped it would never come to this, he said. Every ranger before you has followed the 4 rules. But there's a 5th, the keeper's rule. My hand shook as I took the key. Holt continued. When the rules fail, the keeper must stay. Someone has to hold the binding through sacrifice. That's why there's always been a ranger here. Not just to guard, but to be the last line. Realization hit me like a punch to the gut. He meant one of us had to stay behind. No, I said. There has to be another way. There isn't. Holt's eyes were calm now, almost relieved. I'm old. I've served longer than I should. This burden was always meant for me. He moved toward the basement. The ground quaked harder. From the shattered doorway, the massive creature's tendrils writhed upward, searching. No! I grabbed his shoulder. If you stay, you'll die. Not just die, he said quietly. I'll become part of the seal, like the hollow men before me. That's why they watched. They were once keepers, too. The pieces fell together. The hollow men, the rules, the blood offering. Everything had been a delaying tactic for generations. But tonight, delay wasn't enough. Before Holt could descend into the basement, the creature surged upward, its enormous, lidless eyes fixing on us both. A voice, deeper than earth itself, spoke inside my head. One must choose. The journal's final page flashed in my mind. The keeper's burden may pass to the willing, but the unwilling shall be taken. Holt gripped my hand. Go, get in the truck. Leave this place. Let me finish it. I looked at the key in my palm. The choice was mine. Stay and become the next keeper, or abandon Holt to his fate. But the creature wasn't waiting. It tore through the floorboards. Choose. Choose. The word thundered through my skull as the creature's tendrils wrapped around the shattered floor, creeping toward us. Holt pushed me toward the door. You still have a life, Mason. You can walk away. Someone has to. But I couldn't move. Not because of fear, but because of understanding. All this time, the forest hadn't just been testing me. It had been preparing me. The rules, the trials, the voices, even the hollow men. They weren't warnings. They were lessons. The keeper's burden may pass to the willing. I stepped forward, gripping the key tightly. No, I said. You've carried this long enough. Holt's eyes widened. Mason, I choose, I declared, my voice steady despite the storm around us. The keeper's burden is mine now. The creature paused. The tendrils withdrew slightly. The burning eyes fixed on me alone. Holt tried to protest, but the forest itself seemed to hush him. So it shall be. The earth shook violently as the tendrils enveloped me, lifting me toward the basement's gaping maw. Pain seared through my body, not from wounds, but from something deeper. The ancient magic of the forest rooting itself into my bones, my blood, my mind. Holt's voice grew faint. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. By life, by loss, by will. The final binding words echoed in the air. As the darkness consumed me, I glimpsed the hollow men standing at the forest's edge. But they no longer appeared hollow. Their eyes glowed with recognition. They had all made this choice once. And now, so had I. 1 year later, Ranger Holt retired. A new ranger arrived. They found a new plaque on the cabin wall. 1. Never open the basement door. 2. Do not respond to voices after midnight. 3. Leave an offering at the forest shrine every dawn. 4. Patrol Trail 7 only at noon. Never before. Never after. 5. Obey the keeper. The new ranger asked Holt who the keeper was. Holt only whispered, He watches. He protects. And deep beneath the forest floor, I kept watch. The seal held. The rules endured. And the forest slept once more.